That's all right. I paraphrased that other clip anyway, so we don't need to hear it. But I also think that what David Griffin said there is also indicative of just how unusual this situation is for the Pelicans. Not only are they picking in the lottery, they are picking in the lottery with a pick that they did not expect to be in the lottery. This was a pick that they got thinking, okay, maybe this will be back half of the first round. And instead, they're suddenly finding themselves scouting these prospects. And you saw it kind of happening in front of your eyes later in the season. And it really is amazing how it worked out and the trajectory the Pelicans found themselves on late in the season. And now we're kind of seeing that come to fruition. I think we have that queued up now.
Well, that's good and bad because it limits the range you're going to have to be able to convince people we've got an opportunity for them too. So it's harder, right? So in some ways, it's more challenging to have this many roster spots filled. And on the other side, it's something that you have great optimism about their development. And if their off-season models what we achieved this past off-season, will be in really good shape.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just where you find yourself. Again, we're going to be welcoming in a new audience here. We're going live on YouTube. We're testing out some live stream functionality from within the studio. So hopefully that's working. I don't have time to really look at it. So if it's not, I apologize. If it is, great. If you're watching on YouTube, great to have you. Also, if you want to chime in on the conversation, tell me who you want the Pelicans to pick. I'm alone here. I need your input. Text or call the Oakenart Jewelers Talk and Text line 504-260-1870. You're about 45 minutes away from the start of the NBA draft. And I think it's going to be interesting. I do want to hear Charlie's input here really quick. Charlie, if you had the pen and you could write down whichever player you wanted to pick in tonight's NBA draft at number 8 overall.
This is some pressure.
It is pressure.
I'm sticking at 8. We're sticking at 8 in this hypothetical. I'm not trading down, not trading up.
You could trade. I'll give you the trade option.
Okay, well, this makes it hard on myself.
I did not tee him up so he could be prepared for this. So now we're gonna really test Charlie's. I have the pronunciation guide. You want me to send that to you?
Yeah, sure. That would probably be helpful. But most of these players are fine. I think specifically for me, I liked a lot of what Ryan McDonough said about Shaedon Sharpe, and how he's kind of a question mark, but at the same time, you don't really need a surefire guy with this pick. Like, the Pelicans have so little pressure on them here. This is just a gravy pick, which is excellent. It's great for a Pels fan. So Shaedon Sharpe is an interesting one. Dyson Daniels is one that kind of fits the mold of guys that they've liked recently, like Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, like lengthy guys that can be really good NBA defenders if they get developed correctly. The thing about Dyson Daniels is I think that the question mark around him was his shooting stroke. And that's something that needs to be worked on. However, I trust Fred Vinson. So if they want to go in that direction, that works out. Benedict Mathurin is a guy that I liked, but I think he's going to be someone that goes a lot earlier than the Pels pick. There was buzz about him going potentially at number 5 to the Pistons, which, as McDonough said earlier, the draft starts at pick 4. No one knows what the Kings are going to do. If the Kings are going to take Ivy, then, that's kind of a chalky move. But Ivy's already said that he doesn't really want to be picked by the Kings because the Kings don't have a great track record. So what do the Kings do? Do they trade down? Do they pick a different player like a Keegan Murray or someone like that? It's going to be interesting to see because players in front of the Pelicans pick, it's not all locked in. The top 3 picks are locked in, but after that, from 4 to 7, we have no idea how that order is going to go.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a good point there, which David Griffin also referenced in that clip we just played, which is you can draft whoever you want, but I think a major part of this is going to be you're going to be talking to these players and you're going to be finding out which players are going to be okay maybe with a background role in year 1. It's going to be a player that maybe needs a little bit of development, especially in that jump shot. Jeremy Sohan, for instance, shot 25% from 3 in his lone season at Baylor. That's not a number that's going to get it done at the college level. You're going to need to develop some of that shot, either whether you change the release, whether you change the mechanics, whether you change the types of shots he's taking. That's stuff that you're going to need to get into. And not every player is going to be okay with that. Not every player is going to be okay with learning and not being on the floor immediately. A player like Shaedon Sharpe is a complete mystery in that regard because he probably is a player that would benefit from maybe going down to the G League for a bit. But will he accept that? Will a lot of these players at the top end, like Jaden Ivey, for instance, maybe not interested in going to the Kings, but that's where he's going to land, right? So those interviews are going to be really interesting to see how they impact these picks. But we're going to get into a little bit more of that. We're going to have Scott Spinelli coming up, host of The Breakdown, and he's going to be able to give us a little bit more insight into what we're looking at with some of these players, former college basketball coach himself. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to be getting into this, and the draft itself is always kind of its own animal. But I am fascinated to see how these top 3 picks go. It kind of does feel like they're locked in with the players, and it's really just a matter of where they land with Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, and Paolo Banchero. But we can go to break here, come back on Sports Talk WWL, AMFM.com, and the Odyssey app. I'm Jeff Nowak, hanging with you till 8 p.m.
Now, another traffic update on the
Being alone is such a pain in the ass.
WWL and WWL on FM at 105.3.
From the Acadian windows inside.
Sorry about playing the wrong clip there.
Courtney P, good evening.
The traffic people always send the 620 traffic, so I have to go download that. So I wasn't ready for Griff's clips. Because this isn't live. This is pre-recorded right now.
You're good. I should have warned you. I'm kind of just all out of sorts here because this is stressful being alone. It's nice having someone who's like around that if I need like 30 seconds to think of what I'm going to say next, I can just let them talk.
Yeah.
Span are free and clear. Have a traffic tip? Call WWL at 504-260-INFO.
Join Newell Norman tomorrow at the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation's Centennial Celebration. Hear from the voices of Louisiana agriculture. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Live from the New Orleans Marriott on Canal Street on WWL.
Be disingenuous for any of us.
Hurricanes Ida, Laura, Delta, and
22-acre pick would
caused
be a
extensive
lottery.
damage to homes
We didn't
throughout
anticipate
Louisiana.
that.
If you're an
We
insurance
felt like the
policyholder
best value in the
working
deal
to
was
settle your
further
claim,
out.
your
So
Department of
we got very
Insurance
lucky.
is here to help.
And as is
I'm
often the
Insurance
case in
Commissioner
our
Jim
business,
Donnelly.
it's better to be
Our
lucky than good.
mediation program
And if
helps
you can
settle
be both, you can
residential
achieve
insurance
something. And
disputes
so
up to
we're grateful we're a
$50,000.
playoff team that's holding a
You have the
lottery
right
pick.
to
It's a
file
highly
supplemental
unusual thing.
claims for additional
But I don't
repair
think
costs
anybody
and
from
to repair
trading down
previously undiscovered damage.
the 22
If you
pick would
feel
be
you've
one
been
of
treated
those. So
unfairly by
we got lucky there for sure.
call us at 800-259-5300 to file a complaint. Our team of specialists is dedicated and trained to help policyholders with hurricane claims. I'm Insurance Commissioner Jim Donnelly. Whether you need help resolving a dispute with your insurer or want to file a complaint, call us at 800-259-5300 or visit ldi.la.gov today.
This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or with no warranty coverage at all. Due to a decline in the economy, CarShield is announcing a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that is now available to the public to save any driver out-of-pocket expenses on future auto repairs. Call now to find out how you can pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. Pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for all drivers to call for a free quick quote. Call 800-417-5101 now. Drivers who are covered will not have to pay for covered repairs again. This protection plan is at an all-time low. Additionally, drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Call us for your free quick quote today. 800-417-5101. That's 800-417-5101. What do you have to lose? Call 800-417-5101. Again, 800-417-5101.
Good news, jewelry lovers. Oakwood Heart has received 2 first-place National Design Awards. Still, you know what means more? Being voted Best Local Jeweler by the readers of Gambit. There's a great work of art in every box from Oakwood Heart.
This is a paid attorney endorsement. Prior results do not guarantee future success.
This is Mike Detillier. It's been over 6 months since Hurricane Ida. Are you still waiting for your insurance company to pay your claim? Let me tell you about local attorney Joseph Piasul. He has years of experience to handle your homeowners and business insurance claims. Joe and his team will review your claim to make sure you're going after every dollar that you deserve. Call Joe at 504-867-4542 or click on gowithjoe.com. That's GEAUX with JOE.com.
Attorney Joseph Piasu, offices in New Orleans. LSBA filing number LA 22-12-834.
Mike Detillier here for Bayou Black Electric, South Louisiana's most reliable electric distributor, providing the Gulf South with customer-first service and efficient delivery of quality electrical products and accessories. Bayou Black Electric and Home online at BayouBlackElectric.com.
If you're injured in a car crash, never settle for less than you. We got Scott Insurance Company. And don't settle for just any law firm. Demand Dudley DeBosier. It's always our goal to get you the maximum compensation you deserve. And with our no-fee guarantee, you pay us nothing. No fees, no costs, or expenses unless we get you money. Call now and we'll review your case for free. That's the Dudley DeBosier difference. Call 504-444-4444. That's 504-444-4444. Chad Dudley, New Orleans. LA 22-13579.
You could unlock more cash than you realize from your home's equity with a cash-out refinance today. In the last year, average home values have gone up nearly 20%. And with Rocket Mortgage, you could unlock thousands in less than 3 weeks. But you've got to act right now before rates go up. So when you're looking to unlock the cash in your home, Rocket can. Call 833-8-ROCKET today or go to rocketmortgage.com to get started.
Rates current is at 12/12/21. Call for cost information. Conditions apply. License all 50 states and consumer access.org. 330 call 800-490-1223 for disclosures and cost information.
We are all on this planet together. So join Odyssey and find your one thing. Cut up six-pack rings and reduce your use of plastic to help keep it out of our waterways and oceans. Join Odyssey, and together each of us doing one thing makes a greener tomorrow. What's your one thing?
Sports Talk with Bobby Hebert and Christian Garrick on WWL and Odyssey Station. Connect on the Oakland Heart Jewelers Talk and Text line, 504-260-1870.
All right, Jeff Nowak back here, filling in for Christian Garrick on the third hour of Sports Talk. We're getting closer and closer to the NBA draft. I'm joined on the Oakland Heart Jewelers Talk and Text line by Scott Spinelli, host of The Breakdown on the Believe Podcast Network. How you doing today, Scott?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Always fun to be here with you.
For sure, for sure. Now, one of the things that makes this draft so fascinating is the Pelicans, whoever they draft today, it feels like a gravy pick because you're bringing back a player like Zion Williamson. You're bringing back a player like Kyra Lewis. And one of the things I think you could speak to really, and it's really interesting to me, is how do you reincorporate a player of Zion's impact into an offense and a team and a structure that was very successful last year? How do you avoid kind of derailing so much of what worked well last year by trying to incorporate him back into the system?
Well, that's a good problem to have, right?
Oh, for sure.
Look, at the end of the day, like I think Coach Green, his staff, I mean, they had to kind of adjust some things. And to their credit, they went through some adversity early in the season and they finally figured it out. I think, again, the job that they did this year with that team down there was truly phenomenal, as well as the front office in terms of what they did in terms of evaluating players and really getting value, not only in their first round, but even in free agents. And so I think the New Orleans Pelican roster is complete. I do think there is a need in my mind, watching them as many times as I've watched them this year. I would definitely address what I think is going to be very important. That is another three-point shooter. And I think you can get many of them in this draft. I think there's some you can get first round, second round, and even in guys that are probably going to go undrafted. There's some guys that can really shoot the basketball. But look, I mean, they've got a team that's got versatility. They could play big. They could play small. They could go with Zion. They could even play him at the 5 right now. Look at what Golden State did with Draymond Green in playing with a smaller lineup that was really skilled, and everybody out there could pass, dribble, and shoot. But for certain, Golden State kind of led the way in terms of how they play. But the Pelicans are going to draft somebody very capable tonight, and they've got a really, really good roster. And with Zion coming back, we'll look out next year.
Now, if there was a player in the 8 to 9 range where you are trying to find that 3-and-D wing, in the mold of a Trey Murphy, because I think you can never have too many 3-and-D wings, you can just knock it down from the corner. Who would your pick be at number 8?
Oof, I tell you what, there's some guys that come to mind, and look, for me, I think I would get the best player and at that early juncture, because I don't know, there's going to be some guys that you can get. I think later on in the draft that might be in terms of filling the role of being a skilled wing that might not even be able, might not even be able to take them that high. And you've got assets. And I think, look, you got a guy like Jeremy Sohan from Baylor. I think not that he's a skilled guy, but I just think he's just so good a basketball player. He's a Dennis Rodman type. He rebounds the basketball. You can play him big. You can play him small. He's improving his skill. I think he's going to be one of the best rebounders in the NBA, period, by the time he's done playing. I think Juwan Durham is another guy from Memphis, that's got tremendous size. You've got a guy with unbelievable athleticism, with an incredible motor. But again, those are guys who I think would be the best players maybe to get. As it relates to three-point shooters, I think there's a lot of guys in this draft or skilled wings that you can get maybe later on, in the draft. But again, I'm not sure they're going to be able to get, maybe a guy of the caliber of wing that they would want in terms of getting the best player at that spot that's going to be available.
Kind of looking further down the line, one of the things that usually in the NBA draft, you can kind of say, oh, you're looking picks 41, 52. It's kind of throwaway picks. They so rarely impact the game. But for the Pelicans last year, they had Herb Jones. I think he was picked 35. They had Jose Alvarado, who was undrafted. Is there anyone in the second round that you see as particularly intriguing? A guy who might just not be on anyone's radar, but could show up and have an impact.
Absolutely. I think Gabe Brown from Michigan State is a guy that I'm not sure where he's slated to go, but he's got great size. He can really shoot the ball from the three-point line. He's a lefty. He's athletic. He's older. He's battle-tested. I like Buddy Boeheim. I think Buddy Boeheim from Syracuse is another guy. I mean, we saw what, some of the guys who have done, that have gone, Duncan Robinson, that type of guy that can really shoot the basketball. But I think those are a couple guys that come to mind. And look, when you look at this draft, there's a lot of players that you have to kind of look at based on the G League, based on European basketball. If you're looking for value in this draft, I think you're going to get it. I think you can get it first round. So I like Jake LaRavia from Wake Forest. There's another guy. That might be a guy that you can kind of look at as that, kind of an undersized more of a wing type, but he can really shoot the three. He's a guy that I think you got to keep an eye on. These are some guys that you might not have heard of, but again, I think there'll be guys that you can get a lot of value on, especially later on in the draft.
So, here's a game we can play really quick, and I'm just going to give you kind of an either or question for some of these guys who are going in the first round. All right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So the first one, Benedict Mathurin or AJ Griffin?
For me, I'm taking, again, this is just me. I think AJ Griffin, just based on the fact that he does what I think is going to be such a valuable part of any team right now. I think he's going to become not such a good shooter. He's going to be a great three-point shooter. He's young. He's got size. He's got time to develop. I think he's going to be a guy that, again, looking at rosters and looking at where Mathurin's going to be, I think he's going to be a really good player. Don't get me wrong, but I think right now for my team, I'm taking a guy like, AJ Griffin just because of his ability to make three-point shots.
Okay. Good answer. Moving on. This one's going to be two kind of unknown guys who probably need to develop, Shaedon Sharpe or Jeremy Sohan.
Well, Shaedon Sharpe's just got so much potential and upside, and those words can sometimes be, a little bit tricky, right? But I think at his age, and what he can do athletically, it's just sky is the limit for him. And he's got tremendous versatility, great size. He's young. And I think he's a guy that's only going to get better as he continues. And as you know, in the NBA, all these guys improve their three-point shooting. So I do think his sky his ceiling is very high. But I will tell you this: Jeremy Sohan, to me, is Dennis Rodman with more skill and more savvy. I think he's going to be that impactful in the NBA. I absolutely think if I had a chance to get him on any team, in whatever it is, top 10 pick, top in the lottery, I would take Jeremy Sohan, and then I would figure out my roster from there.
I do really like Sohan. I mean, anytime you see a guy with that level of wingspan and kind of that hustle mentality, it has like a Herb Jones type of effect, I think. Okay, one more, and then I'll stop quizzing you. Jaden Ivey or Keegan Murray?
Again, I think if I'm taking what I think the NBA right now and game of basketball has evolved into, I'm taking versatility and skill. I think Jaden Ivey has athleticism and all of the above, but Keegan Murray, to me, I saw him play in high school at the ME Academy in Florida, tremendous three-point shooter. But what he was able to do in terms of what Coach McCaffrey and his staff did with him in Iowa and developing his skill set, he has now become a very versatile player, one that he can score from the three-point line, which has been his calling card, but he's mid-range. He can put it on the floor. He can go perimeter to post and match up ISO situations. He's athletic. He's around the basket. I would take Keegan Murray based on what I believe to be, again, what's most important, versatility with skill and a three-point shooter. Jaden Ivey has a couple of those, but not all three.
Great answer. And I'd like to point out that I did not tell Scott that I was going to give him that quiz, but he nailed every question, and it's very impressive to me because I put you on the spot and you were right on it. So just the last thing here, and then I'll let you go. One of the things about this draft that feels really unique is just it feels like anyone you take in the top 10 could have a major impact. Whereas like in other years, it seems like you have real serious question marks at a lot of these spots. All of these guys are proven, even and they're all young. Sophomores feel like veterans in the draft these days. Is that kind of your takeaway? And would you feel like any of these guys you get in the top 10, you would have serious reservations about?
Not really. I agree with your point. It's a great point. Look, I think there is some separation with the top three. And again, I'm going to go back to me, Chet Holmgren. Again, I just cannot put my arms around anything that he does not do to help your team win. I mean, he does everything on both ends of the floor. And so, again, I think when you talk those top three guys, there is a little separation. But in the top 10, to your point, any of those guys could become, star power, stars in the league. But what I would be really, again, this is just me talking based on where the NBA is today and what we've seen with Golden State and how they went small last year with Draymond Green as a 0.5 man. I mean, God, he's 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", and they still were one of the better rebounding teams, one of the better defensive teams with a small lineup. But what they did have is skill and versatility with savvy. And so I'm looking for those type of guys right now in this draft. And I think, to your point, there's a lot of those guys with great value all over the first, second round. And some guys won't even get drafted that have value.
All right, Scott, appreciate your time. Again, we're talking to Scott Spinelli, host of The Breakdown on the Believe Podcast Network. Thanks so much for calling in.
Thank you so much for having me, okay? Have a great night.
You too, Scott. All right. Again, I'm Jeff Nowak. We're going hard till 8 p.m. We got the NBA draft kicking off in a few minutes. Going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out. Stick around on WWLAMFM.com, the Odyssey app.
Join Newell Norman tomorrow at the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation's Centennial Celebration. Hear from the voices of Louisiana and tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. live from the New Orleans Marriott on Canal Street.
I don't think so.
I love when Spinelli's accent comes out.
Celebrating a century of broadcasting. For 100 years, WWL Radio has been here for you when it matters most. Here's another moment in history.
It was June of 1997.
What am I to do? This is my career.
to save 40%. LegacyBox.com/value.
Bobby Hebert and Christian Garrett. Sports talk that matters to you.
Back here on Sports Talk, about to close out hour 3, getting closer and closer to the NBA draft. I'm Jeff Nowak, Charlie Long at Master Control, and I think we have a text that Charlie wants to tee up here.
Yeah, we got a nice text. It's also an answer to one of your questions from earlier. John from Luling says the live stream is working great, guys.
Sweet.
Love it. So there you go. That's some good confirmation that the live stream is
Positive
working.
feedback is always nice.
Yeah, just wanted to mention a quick thought about the draft. If the Pelicans decide to draft a player who they are confident in, that's great. However, the highest value you can have in the draft is on draft night. In my opinion, I wouldn't mind moving back in tonight's draft for future picks and assets. Thanks, guys. So
yeah,
this is an advocate for trading back. I don't really mind that, actually.
I've always been an advocate for trading back in the draft because I feel like the thing about draft picks is they're kind of like a car. You know, they lose half their value the second you drive them off the lot. People want to speculate about draft picks. They want to find ways to add to their war chest. I think the Oklahoma City Thunder have about half the draft for the next 4 years because of that. And I would not mind to see the Pelicans, a team, like I mentioned before, who has to reincorporate Zion Williamson, Kyra Lewis, to just, kick it back a year. This is a year you have plus value in that pick that you weren't expecting it. We heard that from David Griffin. That was from his exit interview where, he's not going to pretend that they made that trade thinking this year was going to be the year they got the lottery pick. There's a reason that they had that kicker in 2024, 2025, where they can move it back because that's when they expected for this to be in the equation.
Yeah, and our guy Scott Spinelli really, really talked up Jeremy Sohan, and that's a guy that might be there at around like pick 12 or something like that. So if the Pels want to trade back and still get a pick in this year's draft, I mean, shoot. I don't think I've ever heard someone talk up a prospect as much as Coach Spinelli did with Jeremy Sohan there. He sold me on him, man.
No, and I mean, there's good reason people like Jeremy Sohan. And I think that for a team that feels good about how it can develop a guy's jumper, that's where you would like to see him go because, like I said, he shot 25% from 3 in his lone season in college. That is not an NBA-ready jumper, but you feel good about it. You can bring him along slowly, and that's a guy you can bring in. The thing with trades, and everyone gets really excited about trades, and that's fine, but you have to have a trade partner, and this is always something that comes up in the NFL draft, which is trades are a lot more prevalent in the NFL draft because there are so many more picks to move around. The trades aren't always there, and it's really hard to get a team to agree to your terms in time for the draft. That's why it's much more likely to see a trade in the build-up to the draft than it is on draft day because there's so much pressure. The clock is ticking, and you just don't have time to sit around and kind of go back and forth with teams. And that's where I think that you're going to find some difficulty there. But there's still a chance. We still have time. Still about 15 or so minutes before the draft starts. The Pelicans are, according to the timeline the NBA sent out, their pick should be on the clock around 7:40 Central Time. So we should get it before we go off the air at 8 o'clock. But, I'm not going to put money on it because, you never know.
8 at 41. I think that sounds about right with the NBA draft. The first round of the draft goes really, really slowly, especially the first few picks. Kind of similar to the NFL draft. I think we'll get it in before the end of the show tonight.
Yeah, it's tough. I can never gauge it because I'm so used to the NFL draft where it's 10-minute picks or whatever it is now. And then the NBA feels fast by comparison, but it's also just one night and you're trying to get 2 rounds done. So that's why it goes a little longer because they're 2 important rounds versus, one big round on the first night of the NFL draft and then 2, 3, and then, it's a 3-day event. We got a text. What's up with Kyra Lewis? Nothing specifically has changed with Kyra Lewis. He tore his ACL last year, so he's going to be coming back from that. And it's just a player that you have to incorporate. It's not any issue with Kyra or how Kyra fits into the scheme, but you have 2 first-round picks in Zion Williamson and Kyra Lewis Jr., who with Zion, you know exactly what he is, and you just have to worry about incorporating him. With Kyra, I think you're still trying to figure out exactly how he fits into this team, into this system. How does he fit next to Zion? How does he fit alongside CJ McCollum? You don't know. These 2 never played together. And this is a guy you're heavily invested in. He's going into year 3. is an important season to kind of make a decision on how he factors into your future, which reasons to be a positive future with an upward trajectory. Is he a player that can help you contend deep into the playoffs, or is he a guy maybe that you consider moving on from? He was picked in the same range as Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They were both mid first round picks, and last year you saw the team move on from Nickeil. And I think that was in year 3 for him. It was in year 3 for Nickeil where he kind of made that decision. And that's the year that Kyra is entering right now. So he's a guy who has incredible speed at the point guard position, kind of a questionable jumper, but he has good vision. He's still young. I think he's only 20 years old. So that's just, you got to see what you have from him. And that's why bringing in a rookie and expecting him to get a ton of minutes in year 1 is maybe unrealistic. Last year, Trey Murphy didn't really get a ton of run in the rotation until the second half of the season. So you kind of just have to take that with a grain of salt and figure out where guys fit. And whoever they're bringing in, I assure you that it's a player that they have met with. It's a player that they have spoken with and gotten assurances that they not only are comfortable with the role, that they want to be in New Orleans. Christian Clark of NOLA.com put up a great story today that kind of laid out the groundwork of how the Pelicans have drafted the last few years. And it's been a lot of players from the South. It's been, international players. It's been players that they felt comfortable wanting to be in New Orleans and wanting to embrace the kind of unique culture that New Orleans has to offer. And that's not true of everybody. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how they kind of bring that in.
Jeff, we got a really fun little tweet here from ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski. We
geez.
love the pre-draft buzz. We love it, right? Earlier today, Woj came out and said that the first 3 picks were basically set in stone. Jabari Smith, number 1 to Orlando, number 2, Chet Holmgren to the Thunder, and number 3, Paolo Banchero to the Rockets. However, Woj just tweeted out, the Magic have kept their final decision tight, but Banchero has emerged as a significant possibility to be drafted number 1 overall. We are 10 minutes away. 10 minutes away. We got the buzz.
That is the thing about the NBA. There's
It's
a
fun.
few things about the NBA draft that drive me nuts. One, that they send people up on the stage in the wrong hats, put them in the right hats.
Yeah.
We know where they're
for the
going. We
trades and
don't
stuff.
need to pretend that the teams are, making these picks and then trading them. Just put them in the right
Seeing
hats.
Luka
This is
in
the
a
most
Hawks
important
hat.
night of their lives. Jackson Hayes wore a Hawks hat after
correct.
the Pelicans drafted him, right? This is the most important night of their lives to this point. And they're up there wearing these hats and looking like fools. Nerlens Noel is the one who really stands out. The Pelicans draft pick who was traded to the Sixers on draft night. And he sat down for his interview and he wasn't even aware of it. He was sitting there in a Pelicans hat and they were asking him how he's going to fit in with the Sixers. And he was talking about playing with Drew Holiday. It was like, well, you were traded for Drew Holiday. And like, that's the type of thing. It's like, just be transparent. Just tell the players where they're going to play and put them in the right hats. Anyway, we got a lot more coming up. We're going to have Jim Eichenhofer, Pelicans writer, at 7:20 next hour. And we're going to get into a lot more. Getting into the NBA draft is about to start. Again, I'm Jeff Nowak here on WWL. All right, back here on Sports Talk, I'm Jeff Nowak with Charlie Long at Master Controls. We're getting closer and closer to the NBA draft. But first, we had a question come in from YouTube from Jerry Poe Jr., a.k.a. the OG. He's always watching us on YouTube. I appreciate it because, we don't do that much on YouTube, but he's always around and he always seems to appreciate what we do. And he's always asking questions, and I do appreciate it. And he wants to know, now with Saints minicamp out of the way, we're changing the subject a little bit here. Now with Saints minicamp out of the way, going into training camp, which player are you looking forward to the most? And it's a great question. There's a few players I'm looking forward to. The guy I'm looking forward to seeing that we haven't seen as much from yet has to be Alontae Taylor, the second-round pick out of Tennessee. And I'm looking forward to it because what we didn't see at minicamp was a lot of one-on-ones where you just had the defensive back and the wide receiver just lining up across from each other and saying, okay, who's going to win? And I think that's just a scenario where Alontae Taylor is going to thrive, and he's gonna make life miserable for some of these wide receivers. And I want to see how he matches up with the Jarvis Landry. If Michael Thomas is out there, we don't know exactly what we're going to get from him early on in camp, but obviously that as well, they're very similar players, and the physicality is going to shine there. He's already been chirping back and forth with Chris Olave, and they've gotten into it not too much at minicamp, but there's one play in particular where they went downfield and had a lot of contact in a practice that's not supposed to be about contact. And I just think that's the type of player you're going to get in Alontae Taylor. And I'm really impressed with what I've seen from him and just the level of athlete that he's shown to be already. And, whether he is a major piece of the starting secondary in year one, I think he will be before long. When if there's an injury, there's always some kind of injury. He's going to be right there, and he's going to be a guy who is ready to step in. Really confident guy. Dennis Allen's already talking him up. So he's the guy, if I had to pick one, who I'm most excited to see just kind of what he has to offer. It's Alontae Taylor. And thanks so much for the question, Jerry. That's good stuff. And we will transition back to the NBA draft. Again, let us know who you think the Pelicans should pick. What are your thoughts on the Oakenhart Jeweler talk and text line? It's 504-260-1870. They are leading out the draft picks now. I know Charlie is excited about the suits. Charlie, who has had the best fit, the best outfit
I haven't paid
so far? You haven't paid close enough attention.
I've just been enjoying seeing him walk down like this catwalk. Like if you're watching the stream
I
on
am.
TV, it's pretty cool.
Well, I know Paolo Banchero had a pretty snazzy suit.
Sparkles and
I didn't get a close-up look at it, but yeah, that's one of the best parts about the draft is the experience, is the extravagance. And that's why I get so annoyed about the hats, because this is a moment where you take pictures and you remember for the rest of your life. And Jackson Hayes will forever be remembered on draft night as being wearing a Hawks hat. He didn't play for the Hawks. Plays for the Pelicans.
They have abundance of hats in the background. They can give them the right hat. They just choose not to.
Right. They have all the hats.
Ridiculous.
Why are we pretending? Anyway, it was the same thing last year with the Grizzlies the Pelicans technically drafted Zaire Williams.
Right.
But we're going to see that. And I think I don't know how it's going to work out, because the Hornets trade was so long ago, because it was for Devontae Graham. But I think because it didn't get finalized until the end of this year, that it's still technically going to be a situation where the Pelicans are drafting at 8, but is going to be wearing a Lakers hat, and the Hornets are drafting at 15, and he's going to be wearing, or is it 15 or 13, and he's going to be wearing a Pelicans hat. So we'll see. But yeah. And the other thing I mentioned earlier, the thing that annoys me about the draft, do we have to spoil every pick on Twitter? Who's that helping? Who's that good for?
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah, let's do our live reactions. I'm not going to look at my phone.
I
looked at the one.
I mean, I'm going to look at it because I can't help myself, but it's not good. It's like spoilers for a movie.
Yeah.
Like what? That doesn't make the experience better.
Makes it less fun.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm Jeff Nowak. That's Charlie Long at Master Control. We're going to come back. We get the NBA draft kicking off shortly here on WWL. All right, coming back, kicking off the final hour of today's edition of Sports Talk, and the NBA draft is officially underway. I'm Jeff Nowak, hanging in here, filling in for Christian Garrick. That's Charlie Long at Master Controls. We have the first pick of the draft. Charlie, would you like to fill everyone in on who that was?
So about 20 or so minutes ago, I kind of gave the tweet from Woj that said that, all day we were expecting Jabari Smith to be the first overall pick. And then 10 minutes before the start of the draft, he said, now
Psych!
Paolo Banchero is in consideration for number 1 overall pick. And it was Paolo Banchero from Duke, forward from Duke, averaged 17.2 points per game last season, 7.8 rebounds, a playmaker, a big that can really kind of score. Just really, really quality big. I'm surprised. I'm very surprised because it seemed like Paolo Banchero was who the Rockets wanted. So if the Rockets heard that buzz, maybe they could have tried to move up from 3 to 1. I don't know. I thought it was kind of a smokescreen. I didn't realize he was actually getting picked first overall, but there it is.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think this is one of those instances where you probably found out something late that you didn't like and you went a different direction. Or maybe Jabari Smith was a smokescreen all along and they were trying to get someone to trade up to number 1 because they wanted him.
Yeah.
Either way, I like this pick.
It's the draft games, man.
I really like Jabari Smith, but I like Paolo Banchero more. I've been in love with this kid all season long. He just has such a unique skill set. He's massive.
He was a beast in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, he's been a beast all year. He can shoot. He's a truck. He's a guy who can switch 1 through 5. He reminds me of Jason Tatum. If I had to pick a player comp, which if you remember back in the Jason Tatum draft, everyone was all in on Markelle Fultz at number 1 overall.
Yep.
Celtics had the number 1 pick, traded back to 3. And still got Jason Tatum. Went number 2 that year.
What's going to happen here? I thought that's what that last report was that even if they wanted number 3, if they wanted Jalen Smith, they would have traded back with the Rockets so that the Rockets could get Paolo Banchero.
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe they were playing chicken and then they just were like, well, they called their bluff, so we just have to do it now.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's the first pick of the draft, Paolo Banchero. So we are off and running, and let's see if that kind of changes things up. I think the idea was that the top 3 were still kind of set in stone. And like I said earlier, I thought that was the case and maybe it kind of shuffled around. And that's what we saw here. So it'll be interesting to see if the rest stands pat with Chet Holmgren, with Jabari Smith. I have been trying to not call him Jabari Parker for the last 5 minutes.
Don't do that.
And it's so
don't put
difficult.
that on poor Jabari Smith.
It's so difficult because it's just, Jabari Parker was up there too. I think he was in the top 3 way back when. You have Coach K. I was at the Final Four and I saw Coach K's final press conference, and you could feel it in that room. Like those Duke players, they've only been there for 1 year. It's always weird because there's these one and done players, but there was emotion there. Like they wanted to get it done for Coach K, and it's wild how quickly you can develop that connection. But they clearly did. And the funniest thing I know about Paolo Banchero is there's a clip that went around Twitter that was there was a reporter at I don't know if it was an F1 race, but he was following Paolo Banchero through the crowd, and he thought it was Pat Mahomes. And he's like, hey, Pat. And he's
I did see that. Yeah, I saw that on Twitter.
And then eventually Paolo Banchero turns around and he finally realizes, like, oh, you're not Pat Mahomes. He's like, yeah, but he's the number 1 pick in the draft. You still have a chance to interview a famous person. He had no idea who it was. It was one of the most hilarious things. And Paolo Banchero, to his credit, is just answering this guy's questions, has no idea who he's talking to, but he's still interviewing a famous person that he had mistaken for Pat Mahomes. If you haven't seen it, it's one of the funniest clips. I'm going to retweet it later in case anyone's following along. But okay, we're going to hit a quick break here, and then we're going to come back with Jim Eichenhofer, Pelicans writer for Pelicans.com, who's going to give us the lowdown right before the Pelicans go on the clock. He's a busy guy, so we're going to get to him as soon as we can. And stick around. I'm Jeff Nowak. This is WWL Radio. Back here on Sports Talk, I'm Jeff Nowak. We are still chugging along with the NBA draft. Number 2 pick was Chet Holmgren out of Gonzaga. Still got Jabari Smith on the board. Still got Jaden Ivey on the board. Houston is on the clock now. The idea was they were going to go after Paolo Banchero, but that did not work out for them. I don't know if we were able to connect with Jim. We're going to try him one more time maybe and see if we can get him. Otherwise, we're going to move on. Whatever the Pelicans decide to do here, I think it's going to be really interesting in how they work this player in. We've talked about this a lot. And these next few picks are going to be really telling of the type of player that's going to be available. I think if Shaedon Sharpe is available at number 8, it's going to be tough to pass on him. But again, as I mentioned before, it might be an issue where, he just indicated that he's not really into
they just spoiled the
sitting
pick.
behind a roster that's chock full of rotation players. Pelicans have 14 players under contract. We already heard from David Griffin a little earlier talking about how difficult it's going to be to not only for the player they pick for, you're pitching a free agency, you might come in. That's where the difficulty is going to be. But looks like, okay, we have another pick. We saw a guy on the phone. Who was that?
It was Jabari Smith.
It was Jabari Smith.
Yeah.
Yep. So these top 3 picks, we kind of felt like they were going to be chalk, and that's exactly what they are.
Just a different order than what we originally expected.
A little bit. I think Jabari Smith is that guy who we just talked about all year long. He's just kind of entrenched. And then, the who picked number 1? Orlando?
Yeah.
Orlando got on the clock, and I think they kind of felt differently. Yeah, than what everyone has been saying all along. And that's something that'll happen from time to time. I do enjoy that, one of the reasons that Woj tweets the way he does is because he got in trouble for spoiling picks a few years back. And so they told him he's not allowed to just say, hey, this team is going to pick this team. So
he still does it though.
But he says it in unique ways now. And that's kind of like his way of thumbing his nose at the process. He's like, I can't remember. It was a few years back where he was like, oh, the Thunder are lasering in on so-and-so as their next center or whatever. And I thought that was funny. It's like,
he's still doing the same thing.
Doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And then you have Shams, it's like they're battling to see who can tweet 10 seconds before the other one. It's like, is that what reporting is now? Is just seeing who can get that text. They're getting texts from the same people. Like that's like it's like a race to see who can get the text from their phone and then type it into a tweet without including a typo faster. And then we all get excited and we retweet whichever one came first. And then it's like, just watch it on TV. Who's benefiting here? Anyway, there's Jabari Smith. That Auburn team really screwed up my bracket.
Yeah, they did it to a lot of people. Number 2 seed. A lot of people like them going to the Final Four.
But my fatal flaw was that I'm a UConn fan by trade. And that UConn-Auburn game, if you watched at the beginning of the season, was one of the best college basketball games I've seen in years. It was double overtime, I think. And so I was really excited about UConn. And I was like, okay, if I want UConn to go far, I have to believe that Auburn was pretty good. So I think I put Auburn into the Final Four, and my Final Four was shot by the first weekend.
A lot of people just... Yeah,
but that's,
I
that's
I
why
had Kansas right.
That's why I don't gamble, because I care too much. It is one of my problems when I try to gamble. If my strategy for sports betting is I need to pick one game and I have a good reason why I think this team is going to win that game, and I bet it, or not, cover the spread, whatever you want to do. But my problem is when I win that game, which I usually do, I'm usually pretty good with one pick at a time because I have a reason. And if that reason is correct, then I win that bet. But I can never, when I get that one win under my belt, then I'm like, oh, I got this. And I start
feeling good about yourself.
Yeah. And then I'm like, yeah, I'll bet the Celtics every day, and this year it would have been a good strategy because I think they covered like 14 games in a row.
It was one of the sports flashes I did. We had, I'm forgetting. It was one of the Odyssey NBA insiders on the night before. And he talked about with the NBA finals, the Celtics were like undefeated 8-0 or something like that after a loss in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I included that. It's just like, yeah, the Celtics might be a pretty good bet if you're
I remember listening to that. I do remember listening to that. And then after that point, they did not do it again. They lost 3 games in a row. I remember that sports flash vividly because I was like, you just jinxed it. This is the announcer's jinx of the Celtics in comeback games. But yep, That's where we are. Okay, we have the Kings at number 4, and this is going to be really interesting because, as we mentioned earlier, Jaden Ivey has kind of indicated, the Kings aren't maybe where he wants to be, but he's probably the best pick on the board. Jaden Ivey, Keegan Murray. I did think Scott's answer, all this Jaden Ivey love we've been getting. When I put Jaden Ivey and Keegan Murray in the would you rather, not either or, he picked Keegan Murray.
Yeah. And I
Which
think
I was
it's because
surprised by.
Keegan Murray's got a pretty fascinating skill set for his size. He was a really, really good player at Iowa. Where Jaden Ivey projects as like the Russell Westbrook, Ja Morant type of player that's just a super ultra athletic guard.
He's a a high flying guard.
With
I don't know about his
Murray,
shot.
he's like a 3 or 4. Like he can play multiple positions potentially depending on how big you're going or small you're going. And that's another thing that Spinelli was talking about. Versatility in this draft is a huge deal. So you want the players that you think are going to fit the most different lineups on your team, still be effective.
Yeah, and I do think it's funny that these two, if you're picking between Keegan Murray and Jaden Ivey, these are old men. They're sophomores coming out of the sophomore year. It's so rare to even see a lottery pick get 2 years into the NBA or into college. But hold on. Okay, Jerry had another question. And he asked, who do I think the Pelicans will get? And I do kind of feel like I have been asking people all day who I think who they want the Pelicans to draft.
You got, Jeff?
And I have been completely insulating myself from having any type of take because that's how I like to live. I like to live on the fence. Keeps me alive. But no, I will give it to you. I did a Odyssey mock draft earlier this month, and the pick was made for me. And it was Jeremy Sohan. And so I ended up having to, backfill my own take on why I thought the Pelicans were going to take Jeremy Sohan.
Gotcha.
But in doing so, I happened to kind of fall in love with Jeremy Sohan. And I even, I didn't watch a lot of Baylor games. So I actually had to figure out, okay, how do you pronounce this guy's name? Because I had been in my head, I'd been saying Sochan, it's like a Chameleon type of deal, when you read it and that's how you learned it. But he's a guy who just makes a whole lot of sense, and that's probably who I'd go with. But if Shaedon Sharpe is on the board, I'm not going to lie, I'm taking Shaedon Sharpe.
Well, we're about to see who the Kings are going to take. This is who Scott Spinelli said where the draft
coming
starts.
up.
They're sticking with the pick here.
I know who it is because ESPN's draft cast.
You gotta minimize it.
No, because
you're going to spoil it for yourself.
Yeah, but by the time I look up, it's going to be gone. So I need to keep it going. Yeah. So Keegan Murray. Yeah. So
interesting.
The Kings, I wonder, it's going to be interesting to see whether they kind of bailed on Ivy because of what Ivy said. And, and that is, it's the classic Eli Manning maneuver, right? It's
right.
Like, when you have that type of stock and you get to decide where you want to go. But now, are the Pistons really a better fit? That's the thing. When you're getting picked in the lottery, you're going to end up in a bad situation. It's the fact that the Pelicans are a team that's quote unquote a good situation is rare. If you're in the lottery, it's because you were bad.
I'd heard buzz that the Pistons really liked Benedict Mathurin, but now Jaden Ivey's sitting there. What do you do?
And the Pistons did just trade Jeremy Grant. They have Cade Cunningham, the number 1 overall pick from last year.
Correct.
I think the Pistons are in year 2 of what is probably a 3-year tank.
Yeah, you would hope so as a Pistons fan, but who knows how long it's going to last.
I don't think they're going to be ready to win this year. I don't think they're going to be ready to win next year.
You saw flashes from Cade Cunningham.
Oh, Cade Cunningham was excellent.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that the Pistons are, if this was a process, they would be early on in the stages of the process. They got the Pelicans pick actually, that the Pelicans traded the Blazers for CJ McCollum. It was the Bucks pick that they got for Drew Holiday. And it was an interesting trade because the Pelicans didn't know which pick they were giving to whom until the season ended, because this year's Pelicans pick ended up going to Charlotte. It could have gone to the Blazers had it finished, I think, in the lottery. But instead it went to Charlotte, which meant that the 2025 Bucks pick went to Portland. And so Portland has now traded that 2025 Bucks pick to the Pistons for Jeremy Grant. So if you're kind of scoring at home, the CJ McCollum trade netted the Blazers 3 second-round picks, Josh Hart, Joe Ingles, because they traded Nickeil Alexander-Walker for Joe Ingles, and I'm blanking now. Who else was it? Oh, Jeremy Grant. and maybe one other. I can't remember. But, that trade still looks way better for the Pelicans than it does for the Blazers.
So I just saw the Keegan Murray comp on ESPN was Pascal Siakam, and it reminded me of a redraft that I saw recently of, I believe it was the 2016 NBA draft that Brandon Ingram was selected in, and they had Pascal Siakam going at number 1 in the redraft with, I believe, Brandon Ingram going 3. Ben Simmons was still in the top 10. He was the first overall pick that year. But I thought that was kind of interesting. A lot of respect around the league for Pascal Siakam. So
yeah, and Pascal Siakam, when did he get picked? He was second rounder, right?
No, he was late first.
He was late first
in the 20s.
Yeah, but he's in that range, like, that's like where Grant Williams got drafted.
Yeah.
That it's that type of range where it's a guy who might actually be an NBA ready player. That's the weird thing about the picks 20 to 32 or 20 to 30. Is this might be a player that's ready to play right away, but his ceiling is so low. Brandon Clark is a good example too, where it's like, yeah, he's a 4-year player at whatever school he was at. So he's an adult, he's showing up at age 21, 22 years old. But, this is a player who's probably never going to be more than a rotational player.
That's the Memphis way of drafting recently. They draft a lot of guys that are NBA ready, that have been in college for a couple of years, that can contribute right away. And that's how they've made their rebuild super quick.
Well, and it's how some teams have to, it's how the Lakers have to draft, it's how teams have to draft when they don't have
with what picks?
Money to spend, right? And they're not going to have top picks because they trade them. The Warriors have been doing this for years. The Warriors got Kevon Looney at the end of the first round, key player. The Celtics got Robert Williams at the end of the first round, a key player in, both of these finals teams. That's how they kind of built their depth. And, it's going to be interesting to see how the Pelicans can continue to build that premium depth. It is so strange to be talking about the Pelicans in a positive way, but I can't find anything negative to say about them. And this is just because they've been making great decisions the last few years. I was talking to Mike Detillier yesterday about, the first year and a year plus of the Pelicans under David Griffin. Some of those decisions were rough. He whiffed, I thought, on the Jackson Hayes pick. I still don't like that pick. The Nickeil Alexander-Walker pick was probably a miss, but that was a dart throw. I thought the Eric Bledsoe trade really kind of blew up in his face. The Devontae Graham trade wasn't that great, but he's kind of like a hitter. He's kind of like a hitter that he had a hitch in his swing. Then he finally watched it on tape. He made that adjustment, and he's been just raking ever since. His last, he's gone up there and he, had a couple 5-for-5 games, and all of a sudden he's a batting champion. And all it takes, you got to watch it back. You got to learn from your mistakes, and you get better. And I think that's what David Griffin was able to do these last few years. Stan Van Gundy might have been the worst head coach hire of the last decade, in terms of fit, in terms of what you're trying to get out of it. But I give David Griffin all the credit in the world. It's not easy to hire a guy and then come back and fire him the next offseason, especially a guy with the cachet of a Stan Van Gundy.
Yeah, realizing that you made a mistake and then just moving on from
that is
it
a
instantly.
lot harder to do than it probably seems right now, knowing that Willie Green has done what he did, is to admit you were wrong quickly. And I think that's one of the strategies you have to be good at, is not only you can fail, but if you fail, you have to fail fast and you have to fix it. And that's what the Pelicans were able to do. And we're still moving on. The pick is in for Detroit.
We're pushing that 41 mark, Jeff. It's already 34, and we don't have the 5th pick in yet.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
It's gonna be close.
It's not a good sign. You might have to hear with the Pelicans pick on CBS Sports Radio, which is going to be coming up after we get off the air here.
We'll do our best.
We will do our best.
Whatever's in our control. The pick is in for the Pistons.
Pick is in. We are here. I'm going to keep talking so we don't have dead air as I wait.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll tell you who it is. You want to know who it is? Jaden Ivey.
The fall stops one pick away.
The requested fall.
Yeah.
So you're going to have that backcourt. The
Pistons.
The Pistons. That backcourt is pretty. I don't know what else they got. But
like Sadiq Bey and
they have a solid roster. I still think they're probably a year away. They remind me of the Cavs, right? The Cavs in year one with Colin Sexton and Darius Garland struggled. But we saw what they did this last year.
Garland really took that next step.
Garland, he emerged out of that like Jedi robe that he was drafted in, and he became a star player in the NBA. I don't know if he was an all-star, but he had to be close.
He was one of the picks he was one of the top 3 for the most improved player this year. I don't know if he was an all-star. I can double check.
I think he was close, but I think they have a similar trajectory there. And it'll be interesting to see whether they can, maybe not in year one again. Like I said, I think they're in maybe year 2 of a 3-year tank. Maybe this is the pick that helps them kind of move up that timeline. Because when you have an elite backcourt in the way that they do, and I think Jaden Ivey, even though he's going to be a rookie, I think he's a higher pedigree rookie in terms of being ready to play right now than even Cade Cunningham was last year.
Darius Garland was indeed an NBA All-Star.
He was an All-Star. Yeah, I knew he was close. But all right, we are through 5 picks. The Indiana Pacers are on the clock. Pelicans are a couple picks away. We're going to try to get that to you before we go off the air. I am Jeff Nowak. We're going to hit the break here on WWL-AM-FM.com and the Odyssey app. Hey, y'all, back here on Sports Talk. I'm Jeff Nowak. We are getting close to the end here. We are getting close to the Pelicans selection. We may get it after all. The Portland Trailblazers are on the clock at number 7. We have about 2 minutes left. So I think we are in decent shape. I think we might get it and be able to react to it before we have to hand off to CBS Sports Radio. Who do you think is next up here, Charlie, if you had to guess?
For Portland, I can see Dyson Daniels here, potentially.
Dyson Daniels, maybe a Jalen Duren, maybe a Shaden Sharp. I think this is where we enter Shaden Sharp territory.
This is where Portland wants someone. I mean, they've already made the move for Jeremy Grant. They want to try and compete with Lillard.
Well, you have to.
Yeah,
you don't have this is not, the Pistons.
Lillard's not getting younger.
The Pistons have the luxury of being able to say, okay, we want to develop Cade anyway. We want to pair him with Jaden Ivey and see how that looks before we kind of structure the roster. I think Jeremy Grant was kind of a Blake Griffin holdover when they still had hopes there, and that obviously didn't pan out. But Portland, they got to do something. They don't have the luxury of saying, well, yeah, we're going to wait a year.
I hate to say it because I really like Dyson Daniels, and I've heard a lot of buzz that he's someone that the Pelicans are interested in, but he fits the Pels as well. I just think that this is probably the pick where he goes. We'll see though.
Yeah, I think you need. This is where you're going to see an NBA ready body. That's why I don't see a Shaden Sharp. I don't think this is the Blazers can afford to sit and hope with a Shaden Sharp. But that's why Jalen Duren, 6'10", 250 out of Memphis would be kind of interesting. They need to kind of fill these roles around Damian Lillard. You don't need to worry about a scorer. You need to worry about a wing defender.
Did we mention that the Pacers picked Benedict Mathurin?
I don't think we did.
Okay.
Benedict Mathurin is off the board.
Mathurin at pick 6, which is someone that I liked. So I was a little sad about that, but that's okay. Pels will get someone good.
Benny.
Unfortunate.
Fun name.
That was another team that really messed up my bracket, was Arizona. I had them going to the champ. I actually think they were my champion.
You should never put Arizona far in the NCAA tournament. You should ask me. I would have told you.
Wise lesson that I learned this year.
It's funny though, because I would have said the same thing about Villanova, but Villanova has been bucking that trend recently. But Arizona has been letting me down for a few years, so I've learned my lesson there. But the Blazers pick is in, and that guy said they probably weren't going to draft
Shaden Sharp.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Shaden Sharp.
Oh my.
Going to Portland. So that is an interesting pick. It really takes an intriguing option off the board for the Pelicans, who are just about officially on the clock. That is a interesting pick, I think, because you don't know what to expect. And you're going to plop him next to, I guess you are trying to replace CJ McCollum. I guess you could say that. And that's why you take I say that it doesn't make sense that the Blazers went after Shaden Sharp, but then again, they took Dame Lillard out of Weber State. They took CJ McCollum out of Lehigh. I guess this is right up their alley. So I shouldn't be surprised.
The number 1 recruit in the 2022 ESPN 100 before enrolling at Kentucky midseason.
Did not play a second of college basketball.
Yep.
All we've seen from him is a few minutes of high school tape. And he looked good in the tape. But Zion looked great against the high school kids too. And and no one trusted that until he did it to get to Duke. Yeah. Like everyone was like, oh yeah, who is he dunking over? And then when he did it over for Taco Fall, you started to be like, oh, I guess that's real.
Maybe this kid's actually special. Shaden Sharp's interesting. I saw a breakdown of his tape from like the last games that he played in like AAU and high school hoops and everything. He's a guy that can really shoot from all over the floor, but the questions are his effort and defensive capabilities, stuff like that. So he was someone that's interesting. He fits the current day NBA as someone that can really create his own shot and, as I said, shoot from literally anywhere on the floor. I think he fits pretty well next to Damian Lillard, surprisingly. So I think that's kind of what they're seeing. But I don't think you can ask Shaden Sharp to come in and instantly give you big minutes if you're Portland.
No, and that's the only reason I was kind of questioning it, because you want to keep Damian Lillard happy.
You want an NBA ready guy.
Yeah, and maybe this was a Damian Lillard guy. Maybe Damian. I would be shocked if the Blazers didn't at least clear this pick with Damian Lillard, because in the NBA you got to keep your stars happy, and if he didn't want this pick, I don't think they would have made it. But the Pelicans are now on the clock. We're going to hit a break and come back with that pick. They got about 4 minutes left. I'm Jeff Nowak, and Charlie Long at Master Controls. We're going to have a bit more on WWL coming at you. Charlie. Hey, Charlie. Charlie.
What you got?
The pick.
Yep.
Is in.
It is.
At number 8 in the NBA draft, the Pelicans, the New Orleans Pelicans, have selected Dyson Daniels.
There it is.
A G League out of the G League. The G League Ignite is the actual name of the team he played for last year. This is the first time in a while you've seen the Pelicans go big on, it might be the first time ever you saw the Pelicans go big on a player who did not play in the NCAA.
Nope.
And it's interesting because the developmental curve for him might be a little different from a player who was in college. He was playing professional basketball last year. So, he didn't have to worry about class. He was worrying about being a professional player. He's out of Australia. He's 6'6", about 200 pounds. He's more of a wing than a guard, but I think you could still see him slot in at the guard position. Long arms, rangy defender. Some comparisons to maybe Alonzo Ball on the defensive side. What are you seeing?
So here's his just combine measurements. He had grown actually to 6'8", 200 pounds, reported 6'11" wingspan. So
that's something.
Yeah, that's pretty nice length. And if you look at what the Pelicans have been doing recently, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, guys that are wings that have really long wingspans, really bigger guys that could potentially be versatile defenders. I mean, it makes sense.
No, and I mean, last year I sat here doing a draft special alongside Scott Alexander and just yelled for about 20 minutes about how the Pelicans need to prioritize wings who can defend multiple positions and shoot from the corner. And I think that's what you're going to get here. I do think that he probably needs to bulk up a little bit. And it's something you say a lot about young players. I don't know if he has an NBA ready body. I think he probably needs to get a little stronger. If he has grown to 6'8", 200 is not exactly an imposing weight. And he's going to get bullied a little bit.
He is only 19 years old as well.
Well, so. Right. And that's why young players, this is a normal critique, and it's going to be on the Pelicans to kind of bulk him up a little bit. But hey, if they can get it out of Brandon Ingram, I think they can get it out of him.
In his draft profile, it says his weakness is shooting. However, he still had 45% from the field, which is still pretty solid overall. And I think the Pelicans think that they have a strength with Fred Vinson as their shooting coach. So they can improve anyone's shot. They were able to take Lonzo Ball's jacked up shot and turn him into a decent 3-point shooter. So
Brandon Ingram wasn't a great shooter either. It was interesting to see how Brandon Ingram kind of shifted last year. He kind of stopped taking a lot of threes, but they did kind of correct some of the hitches in his shot. So I think the Pelicans always feel good about, if there's a guy who the main negative is, he's just not a consistent shooter. They trust Fred Vinson to kind of take that to the next level. He averaged 12 points, 7.1 rebounds, and 5.1 assists, 2 steals a game.
Very versatile.
The Pelicans are they're doubling down on lockdown defense, which good.
Yes.
There was so many years, especially under the Alvin Gentry coaching regime, where all you needed was a semi-competent defense and you couldn't get it. And it was infuriating to watch. It just looked like they just had no plan. They didn't have the athletes to play good perimeter defense. They didn't have the effort to play good perimeter defense. And that's clearly been something that's changed significantly under Willie Green. And I'm happy to see it because there is nothing more frustrating than watching a team lose 135 to 132.
You saw that a little bit with Stan as well, where there were games where the teams that the Pelicans were playing would just go off from the 3-point line because they just had no perimeter defense at all.
Yeah, but it was different with Stan. It was like he was yelling about defense all day long. They just weren't doing it.
They just didn't care.
Alvin, I'm pretty sure Alvin just was just like, hey, if we score enough, we don't have to play defense.
Yeah.
And I mean, he came out of the Phoenix Suns like 7 seconds or less, era. That's where he kind of got his coaching pedigree from. So that's just that was where he kind of developed his, tendencies.
We've said it multiple times the last few weeks. Like the NBA Finals this year proved that defense still matters.
Yeah,
the top 2 defensive teams in the league were facing off.
And I do wonder how much it matters to the NBA because I don't think they like defensive.
Oh no, the NBA wants all the dunks and 3-point shots and the.
That's true of any sport.
Massive, right? Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with baseball. Baseball wants home runs.
The NFL stopped giving the Saints the Bucks on Sunday Night Football because they beat them 9-0.
Yeah,
they gives like ESPN can have it. But we are continuing to go through. There's a lot of interesting players left on the board, and we kind of have spent all day talking about number 8. Pelicans also have number 41, number 52.
Correct.
As we saw last year, the Pelicans have pretty good instincts with those later round picks. They got Herb Jones. We're talking about how Dyson Daniels can pair with Herb Jones. Herb Jones is number 35 overall pick.
We're talking about how, there's not many roster spots on this team. Do the Pelicans package those 2 picks in the second round and maybe try to move up in the second round?
The value of a second round pick is so low.
Well, you're still getting a second round pick.
Yeah,
if they have a player that they want, early in the second round, maybe like at pick, I don't know, 37
I think it's
or
more
something.
likely they take one of them and they just ship it forward. They find a team like the Warriors who just want to add a piece and they like a guy late in the draft.
Okay.
And they could just sell it the way I think the Magic sold number 35 for cash. You know, that's the value of a second round pick. So it's really tough. It's not like the NFL draft where a second rounder is a potential starter and, you know, trade, like there's the value of that is so high. And the NBA, once you get out of like the top 15, these picks are, you know, worth pennies on the dollar. And it's more about whether you can accommodate them than anything else. But the Pelicans do have a G League team now. So they might have a little more value in picking those picks than they had previously, where a couple of years ago they were making picks in the second round. And by the time you had enough time to Google the name and kind of go, oh, okay, I like this guy, they were traded. So I don't know how they're going to handle it this year, but I imagine they will have some more space to be a little more aggressive with those picks and actually make them. And we'll see. You know, like Jose Alvarado was an undrafted guy. And when you have the run to get these guys on the floor, you can get a little excited about Jose Alvarado. This year, if they wouldn't be able to add a Jose Alvarado to this roster. And so, you know, you kind of just got to see what you have available and see what you can develop and go from there. But that's going to be it. I'm Jeff Nowak, filling in for Christian Garrick on SportsTalk. I want to thank Diane Newman. I want to thank Ian Hoke, Kevin Cassidy, everyone who helps us put this broadcast on the air. Charlie Long at Master Control. Another successful day. Thanks, y'all, for tuning in to WWL.